Good morning, everyone. This is Denise Broom in the Engineering CAD Systems office, and I'd like to welcome you to this week's Weekly Wednesday webinar. This week we're going to be covering topic of plan sheet clipping, and it's one of those that's been requested that we bring out. And basically the objective today is to learn how to clip our plan sheets, and we're going to be using GEOPAK's Plan and Profile Sheet Composition tool. That being said, I'm going to jump straight into MicroStation. Past it. Alright. So, we've got a project. We need to clip our sheets. And basically the first thing you have to have, obviously, is your design files. Today we've got our I'm in the design file, DSGNRD. There's a few files that I need to go ahead and create, and I'm going to go to Actions, Create, Edit File from the FDOT menu. I'm going to make sure I go to my project settings, select your active project, which is not right for today. Dang it. You have to double click it. Alright. Select. Select OK. I want the roadway control file. And I need to go down to roadway design for the DGN files. And I want to pick out a couple of sheets, sheet files basically. First thing is that we're going to show you how to set it up using the borders. By default, if you use our sheet library, it's going to call to put it into this border file. So I'm going to go ahead and create the border file for plan sheets. Actually, I need plan and profile sheets. I'm going to create that. Clip borders. This is the file that we need in order to put our clip borders into. So I'm going to create that file, and I want to show you another two files, and they're down here. These are the Motif files, and I'll get into exactly what those are here in just a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and create. Actually, I have these already created. I just wanted to show you where these were. We also have the Motif files for our plan and profile sheets, and if this is an option that you decide to go through, we've got those already set up, so you can grab those and create those as well. Alright. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and open up the clip border file. Come on, open up. Okay. In the clip border file, this is the file that we are going to use to place all of the clip borders that we need to clip our sheets. And there's a couple of different ways that we can do this. First way of doing it, and the way that I really recommend doing it, is to use the current active file in order to set up all the references that I want it to clip with those borders. Okay, and I'm going to go through that process using the current file first, which would be our clip border file. So first thing I want to do now is I want to go ahead and start adding reference files. And it's on the other screen. So I'm going to tell it to attach. And I'm going to need my alignment file. I'm going to need my design file. Let me see, control. I'm going to need my design file for my profiles. I'm going to add the right-of-way and the topo. Sometimes this is in this file in the same working directory. Sometimes it's not, these last two. If not, you'd have to attach those separately. I'm going to go ahead and attach them all together here. And I like to turn off, this makes me feel better. Displaying raster references. If I don't have rasters, I turn that option off. Sometimes GEOPAK and raster references, when we're talking about clipping sheets, They don't play well together sometimes. It can cause you problems. So if you don't have to have that turned on, I recommend turning that off. Alright, so, and this is my alignment file, so I need to make sure I get the right one. So there's my alignment. Okay. And my design file, default. The profile, default. Right of way, default. And my topo. Alright. Fit view. There's my design, and here is my profile. Alright, so those are the basic components that I need for clipping out my plan sheets. Alright, next thing that I'd want to do is to go ahead and go in and turn off maybe some levels or turn them on, whatever you needed to do. So I could go in here, look at, and it's on the other screen. Come here. That's behind my GoToMeeting. Okay. So basically what I do is I just want to look and see, okay, what levels do I have on? Let me turn off the level filters. Some of these things I would not necessarily want it to show up on my plan sheets. I would need lane lines, okay, messages. I'm not sure why some of this stuff is in this file. Slopes. Alright. Let's turn our traffic separators back on. Okay, so I've turned off, and you'd go through all of the different, you'd go through each one of your files in here, and I think it's that one. I want to turn that one off. So just go through each of your reference files, turn off any levels that you don't want turned on, or make sure that you have the ones you want turned on. And once you've finished that, save the settings. When the tool clips our, let's go up here. When the tool clips our sheets, it uses this file in order to determine not only the references it needs attached, but it also honors the settings for those references. So I've just set it up so that I don't have to go back in once I've clipped and go turn levels on and off for each sheet. I can do that all at one time beforehand and then clip the sheets, and then that's the way all of my sheets will be set. Alright, so I can turn that off. Alright, so now that I've got my files set up and I've got my levels where I want them, I've saved the settings, I can now go in and start actually using the tool. Where do I find it? I can go to GEOPAK, Road, and this is in Power GEOPAK, so if you don't have Power GEOPAK, it'd be Applications, GEOPAK Road, and I want to go down to Plans Preparation, and all the way down here towards the bottom is the Plan Profile Sheet Composition tool. Let me open that up. Alright. I can also find that if I have the road tools open, I can get to it in the road tools, and it is, I go to plans preparation, and it's down at the bottom. Okay, let's see. I can also get to there if you happen to use the civil workflows. I know in the road workflow, if I go down to sheets, I've also got the option down here as well. I'm not going to go into those because that would, if you use any of the workflow over here for like the road workflows, it's going to want you to open up Project Manager, which isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing. I'm not going to go through that today. I'm just going to open up the tool here and start showing you some of the things that are out here. The sheet library, and let's go ahead and go into that. We have a PSL file, which is the plan sheet library that we use. We've got one set up there that has the defaults already set up for you to use and for the F.dot workspace. I'm going to go ahead and go into edit. if you are working from a server, if you wanted to make any changes to this PSL, we recommend that you copy that down to your working directory. It can go in the working directory, or it can also go, I believe it can go in the SYMB. I don't think, it's not going to hurt anything for either location. But if it's there, then you'll be able to make the changes that you need that may be project specific, and then that will go with your project so that you get what you need. Let's see. We're going to work on a plan and profile 50. And I just want to go through these settings, and I'll also look at some different options that may be in plan sheets, because we've got the plan and profile, we have just plain profile, and we also have where you can dual clip or single clip just plain plan sheets. But I want to look at the plan and profile for right now because it gives me pretty much everything I need. General settings, most of the time you should not have to change anything that's sitting in here. It gives you the description, the size of the sheet. This is at a scale, not size of the sheet. This is the distances that it's going to use when it stacks your plan sheets into the file. If you have placed more than one per file. Cell library, the sheet cell that we're using. Remember that this is a base scale of 100 that's going to come into play later. We have two options with our sheet cell placements. Whether I place it one time in a reference file, and that's where the border file comes in, and this is how it's set to as a default. I can also place the cell in each sheet file. The way that MicroStation's now handling references, it really doesn't matter. References versus cells, it really doesn't matter which way you want to go with this, but we still are recommending to place it once in that reference file, and then we've got the border file, which I did create, for it to place that border one time in that file, and then it gets referenced every single one of my sheets. Okay, grid alignment. Basically what this does is this sets it up so when you start placing clip borders, this tells it the accuracy that you want it to use so that it lines up on our grids. For the horizontal, what you're going to find is that they're set to 1. That way it puts it at an even station. It can be set up that way, if like where my border starts, if I set this to something like 10, then it would have to be an increment of 10. So if I, instead of 20 plus 5, it would go to 20 plus 10. It would automatically bump me to that nearest increment of 10. If I did it at 25, it would be the nearest plus 25 stationing. We've left it to 1 to give you flexibility for where you want to start your sheets. The vertical, this is for the profiles, when it starts placing the profiles. So if I've, for a 50 scale plan sheet for the profiles, we've set that so it starts, it'll be at a measurement of 5 increment that'll start on those grids. Hopefully that made sense. I don't see any questions popping up, because I know that a lot of times you go in here and you're trying to get something in here and you're not sure what to change in order to get your sheets to do what you want it to do. Sheet annotation, this one's pretty straightforward. We've already set the symbology up and where to locate it. This, like I said, this is at a scale of 1, or based on a scale of 1. So if you were to actually place the cell at a scale of 1 and then measure over, so like the sheet title, if I were to measure over the 12.2 and down from, and this is from the cell origin, which is in the It's above the border at the bottom with all the sheet title information, but it's that bottom left corner of the sheet. So if you were to go in and you had a different sheet or you needed to make adjustments to something, that's how these are determined. Okay. And if you didn't want it to put any of this information in, you just untoggle these. All right. Ports. Ports are basically the view, or where we're going to clip and create that border. It's the view in which I need the boundary to be made. And we have basically 3 types of ports. We only use 2. We've got a plan port, which is going to show our plan view. We have profile ports, which we use when we're clipping our profiles because they're a little bit different. And then tabular data. Tabular data is we don't use those, and it's something that's been around for a long time, but it's not one that we use. So I'm going to skip that part. So basically, if you were to come in and create a new sheet, and you'd say, okay, I've got my plan port is what I want on the top, and it has to have a dependency. So in the plan view, my dependency is on the alignment. So I want it to go along with my stationing, and I want it to go along the alignment. So that's how we set up the plan port, and then we give it a symbology. Okay. And this one right here, generate the clipping shape from the port symbology. Okay, and that's what we want it to do. Within this plan port, we've got a drawing area which says how big is the area that I have for that port, so it knows how big to create that border. For the plan and profile sheet, we're looking at 14 feet wide and 5.4 feet tall. And this is important to remember in here, how big this is, because it kind of goes hand in hand with the offset from the cell origin. Let me see if I can make this a little bit easier. Let me place a cell, and that's under here. And I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. Alright, so there's, actually that's not the one I wanted. Roadway. That's the one that we're using. Alright, so if I zoom into this sheet border, this may make it a little bit more sense here. Alright, so I'm looking at the sheet border, and my plan portion is what I want in here. That's the top port, and then the second port is the one on the bottom. My cell origin is right here. Okay, so I've got 14 feet from blue line to blue line, and there's 5.4 feet from this red line up to the blue line. Okay, so when I go in, and that's my drawing area, so when I look at my offset for my cell origin, if I'm going to use all of that space, which is the 14, okay, then it's going to say, okay, go up yeah, plan profile. Okay, so my cell origin offset X is set to 0, and then my Y offset is set to 0.1. Why is that? That's how far up it's going if it was at a scale of 1, which doesn't look right. But I know it works. Okay. And the same things are set up down here for my port, for my profile. No. Hang on a second. Aha. That's why it wasn't making any sense. Regular plan sheet, my cell origin is down here at the bottom. For a plan and profile sheet, the origin is set to right here. Okay, that makes more sense now. So, if I go back up here, that makes more sense. Okay, so there's my cell origin. I'm telling it X, I want it to be at 0, but I don't want it to be, clip it all the way to this line. So to give it a little bit of a margin, it's bringing it up 0.1. If I look at the profile port, it's not quite as tall, so it's giving it a different height, and it's saying, okay, there is my, I've got my drawing area, and it's also saying, okay, I'm going to use, this is my X offset, it's going to stay at 0, and then it's going down the 4 feet so that it starts down here at the bottom. So this whole area gets clipped out as a clip border boundary. Alright, let me go back up here to port 2 for the general information. So the port type is profile, and the dependency, I want my dependency not to be along my alignment, but I want it to go and use the, I want the profile portion to match the plan portion that I clip. If I tell it to use the alignment, then they become independent of one another, and I don't want that. If I modify or I move my clip borders, I want my profile clip borders to move with my plan. Okay, so we're setting the dependency to the other port. It's going to depend on port 1. Again, the same information down here, but the big key here is that if I move my plan stuff, my plan clip borders, I want to make sure that my profile is dependent on that plan port for that same area. Okay. For the profile, we also have some extra information in here for the settings for the horizontal and vertical axis. Basically, we've set these up already for you. They should work just like you need them to. But we've got these for the horizontal axis. We're telling it, okay, we want to increment every 100 feet and set the settings in here so that it will place your offset, your stationing along the bottom, and it also will set my vertical axis labels and the increments. If you're using a different scale, these increments have been already set up for the different scales. So for the 50 scale, we're selling it, okay, every 5 feet. So each one of these grids is 5 feet, okay, because of the scale that we're using. This particular one is 50 and 5. So that will land on these grid lines. Alright. That's it in a nutshell. As I said, if I were to use a different scale, say I went to 40, I'm going to see that some of these, no, it wasn't that. I'm going to see that some of this information is going to be different. For example, you see that the vertical axis labels, it's every 2 feet. So we've already taken into consideration the scales that you're using and set the different settings up accordingly. Okay, I think that's pretty much the basic information of what you need to know in order to go in here and modify the settings that you needed. Oh, match lines, I didn't hit those. Match lines, basically if you want match lines to be drawn, all you have to do is just toggle this on and match lines will be drawn. So you don't have these set up. Yeah, 50 scale, I don't have it set up in here. But if I did, all I'd do is just toggle this on and then the match line information would be set in here. Okay, so make any changes, of course, just save the file. And like I said, you'd already made a copy, so you'd be opening up the library that is the one that's in your working directory if you make any changes. And then save it once you're finished and exit. I didn't make any changes, but whatever. Okay. Across the top, there are some extra settings in here. During the view, the filtering by the sheet name or by scale, this one I really don't mess with. I leave it just like it is. Settings, this one's important. It's got the sheet layout settings in it. This is, I don't see you changing the left to right, but you can go right to left if you were doing rail cross sections. I mean rail clipping, not sections. Profile stair stepping, I'm going to leave that off. Basically what that would do is it kind of cuts your borders up so that and shifts them as it goes along. If you had a really steep profile that you can't get onto one sheet, you know, one clip, and so you have chunks of it not being shown, you may want to look at turning this on. But this is right here is the most important thing, I think, is the sheet view attributes. Right now we're using the current design file. If I wanted to use Motif Files, in order to do that, I've got to turn it on in the settings box. Okay, so this is where that's located. But we're going to use the current design file and tell it okay. Alright, that's setting tools. Tools, this is basically everything that I can do using these icons. Okay, so I'm just going to start going through these icons. Sheet composition, that's first. You need to tell it how do I want to create these borders. Alright, I've got 4 different options. Alright, I can do it by begin station overlap, and this will basically create an overlap of all of my clip borders, and I can tell it what that overlap is. Say I wanted 20 feet. I could place 20 feet in here as an overlap. Okay, and didn't I just type in 20? That's acting like a percentage. I'm not sure what that's doing. Okay, I don't want it to do an overlap. This area in here is where you'll probably be making any changes if you're going to be making them. Basically, the horizontal and vertical act, how do you explain this so it makes the best sense? It's kind of like basically it's like a margin on either side, or if I'm talking about, you know, horizontally and vertically, creating a margin within this drawing area. It got the maximum drawing area from the sheet library, and it's going with the smallest one here because that was the profile area. But it takes that when it goes to create this clip, and it takes this into consideration, and it will make your drawing area and the amount shown smaller. So say if I wanted to create a border within there and say 50 feet. Why is that not doing that? Oh, I know why it's not doing that. It's because I don't have my right scale up here. And I know why it's showing the wrong port. Okay, let me back up a little bit. One of the first things that you want to do once you set your library, you want to pick the plan and profile or whichever sheet that you want to use first, and set the scale. Everything else, every dialogue that I use beyond this is going to use that information. And I should have keyed up on that, I'm sorry. So and that's why this overlap didn't work. I didn't have 20 feet available. So anyway, so if I go in here now, it's going to take that 50 feet. And so what it did is it put 50 feet on both ends and subtracted that from my maximum drawing area, which is 700, to give me drawing shown of 600 feet. Hopefully that makes sense. The same would happen vertically if I were to, if I needed to make this smaller, I could do that as well by putting in a value here. So see, instead of 270, I'm seeing it as being 250. I'm going to set these back to 0. Alright, let's take a look at some of the other options here. By station inside out. What this does is it takes the horizontal distance that I put in here. This is the maximum area that I can use. Alright, and so it's going to give me a station range of 700 feet. If I go in here and add a value, say 20, inside out, maybe actually, I'm going to show you this in the help because it makes more sense. It's hard for me to put it into words. Go to the help. It's going to take that distance and it'll create the clipboard at 660, but you're still going to see it'll vary, but it creates a clipboard that's actually a little bit bigger than what you're looking at. Inside out, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go plans preparation and sheet composition tool. And that's not the one I wanted. Layout settings. No. There we go. Alright. Let me just show this to you. So if I had, in this particular instance, in the way that they're showing these, if you see the overlap that I'm getting in here, they've put in a value of 50. Well, it is actually going from this station to this station, but it's still clipping it out beyond. So I'm getting this overlap. So it's like the try to get this to think, okay, so I'm telling it, okay, inside out, it's actually taking that value, instead of working this horizontal like you think it would, it's actually pushing it to the outside. Alright, so it's adding 50 feet to each end, if that makes better sense. My other option is to go outside in, and these really are the overlap, I think, is still being used. The inside and outside, I don't think are used very often. So if I go the outside in, where I'm telling it in this example here, I'm still looking at that same station range, but it's going to actually clip it. And all of my clip boundaries are going to be perfect rectangles. Okay? And so it's actually going to subtract that, and this is going to do what you think it's going to do. Okay? So it goes in here and it will create that border. And that's outside in. And my last option, and this is the one that we really would recommend that you use, is to use the radial. Whether I use outside in or if I use radial, either one of these options, one of the things that I do need to watch out for is the areas around a curve. Do you notice on the top side I have where it's not clipping everything? I'm missing information. Sometimes this is no big deal. It'll be up towards the top. sometimes it's going to be, I really need to look at it because it may be that my portion is actually getting part of my design that I need to have shown. So you need to kind of keep an eye on what does it actually clip. Alright. And radial, if I use radial, what it's going to do, let me just show you this really quick. If I use radial, when it creates those clip borders, this is what I'm going to wind up with. Okay, it figures out where it is, it puts a line perpendicular to my baseline, and that becomes where the sheet border gets clipped. Okay, so they all touch exactly as they're going around. Again, you do need to be careful of the gaps. Alright, let me get us moving on along here. So I'm going to pick the radial, and let me close that. The next thing that I need to do, and I'm going to delete my border real fast. The next thing that I need to do is actually create the borders. I need to give it the job number, and I'm going to have 2 ports set up. I need to go in and I need to give it the information. So this one I'm going to use baseline construction, tell it OK. And if I had a baseline that was running outside of my job, or it's not right through the center, that's where this offset could come in handy. You could move it one way or the other to shift the borders so that it's actually covering the design like it needs to be. If it's down the center line, you don't have to use an offset. Right. Profile port, this is basically looking for the information of where is this cell, where is my profile. It's referenced in, I just have to identify cell, accept it, and tell it OK. Okay, so now it has the information that it needs. And I'm going to tell it to lay out these sheets. Alright, that quick, it's laid everything out for me. I can now close that. And if you ever get in there and you get like a huge number of sheet borders that it's creating, most likely what you need to do is you need to go back and look at, did you set the scale before you went to put your borders. I've seen that happen. So just go back up, delete the borders, or don't click on to create them in the first place. Change your scale, and then they'll come in right. Before I clip these, I want to go into show you a couple of things. Wrong one. Modify. You can modify these borders using MicroStation. It's not always recommended because GEOPAK puts information in here. I've got 2 options. I can slide my sheets, which is just moving them down my alignment, and I've got a couple of different ways I can do that. I can identify which sheet border that I want to move, and then I can tell it to slide sheets before it and slide sheets behind it. I could just move the one, or I can tell it to slide everything. So say if I just had the sheets before it, I can go in here and I can tell it, I can type in a number, I can do it dynamically and grab the sheet. So if I grabbed it, I'm just going to move, you notice it moved all these sheets with it. Alright. Oh, I grabbed the wrong end. How do I want to do that? Let's see if undo works. Yeah, it does. Okay, good. Dynamically, that doesn't work as well. I can put in the value. I can tell it from the left station, center station, or right station. I think leaving it at left station, you're probably fine. Sheet cord offset, this basically is moving it up and down, and I can do that dynamically, and or just type in whatever value that I want to put in here. I can also add rotation. Now rotation only goes about the left station. And it basically is going to do exactly what it says. It's going to rotate my sheet in here from the alignment. Don't know how much I would actually recommend using the rotation, but it can be done, and this is how you would do it. Modifying the sheets, that's the other one, modifying the drawing area. And these basically is just changing the actual area of what's being shown. Okay, it's kind of pretty straightforward there. Alright, next option, modifying the sheet number or the sheet number manager. If you clipped all of your borders and you put another border and clipped it at the end and you want to place it somewhere else within here, it's going to show up by sequence number as being the last one. You can move that just by highlighting it and moving it up. Okay, you can see the stationing. It's moving this up. Let me put it back down at the bottom. The other thing that we can do, you can grab groups of these, and I'm going to hit Shift and 9. I'm going to grab these, and I'm going to show you how you would come in here. I can edit the sequence number, but I want to edit the sheet number, and I want to add 0 to the beginning of these so that these all stay together. Whenever it creates my sheets, I can, if I have this situation, I can come in here and add that 0 to here, and it will add the 0 so that my file names, if I had one per file, I would get, you know, Plan RDO1, Plan RDO2, and then it stays in sequence in my filing order, and that's how that would get done. I can ID different ones, so that's sheet 10, and be able to visually see where it's at and be able to move these things around. I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to save the changes made. ID basically will just ID whichever sheet you select. And the last but not least, this is the last thing you want to do, is go in and create sheets. And I don't want this to become real drawn out. I'm just going to create one that's got 5 sheets in it. It shouldn't take, actually we'll do 4. I don't want it to take real long. I have to tell it the directory that I want it to go to. So CE projects webinars roadway. That's where I want it to place it at. In my roadway directory, I have a sheet prefix. This is the file name, which is PLPRRD, and you see I've got 01 is the DGN, and I'm just going to create. I'll go ahead and create just the one file. If I use rotate reference, I can place more than one sheet per file, because what that does is it places the sheet and then it rotates all of my references to fit within the sheet with the same orientation. If I use rotate view, which some people do like to do, if I rotate view, then I can only use one sheet per file, because what it does is as it goes around curves, it's actually placing the sheet an orientation to the view, and everything gets or an orientation to the alignment, and it rotates the view when it clips the sheets. Then that makes it so that when it cuts all of my sheets, everything is still in the same location, X and Y value, or within the northing easting. If you look in here, this is still in the exact location that it is now. It just all gets clipped out and put on a sheet, plan view wise. And then the profile get clipped and just put up underneath it. You can use the sheet title and put the project number, put all this information in if you would like. It's been set up. If you leave it blank, you can use Sheet Navigator to fill out this information. I know I tend to just let Sheet Navigator do it. So put this information in and then tell it to process sheets. And this create digital interplot, that's iPlot, and it's not something that we support, but if you do use that, you need to toggle this on and do what you need to do with that, but it's not something that our office supports. Alright, so I'm going to tell it to process the sheets, and while it's processing sheets, I'm going to see if there's any of these questions that I can answer. I had one. Isn't sheet measurements in real inches and not scale feet? No. The way we've set ours up is that it's, if you were to measure it, it would wind up going in, and it's actually 14 feet if you go in there and measure it, and that's the way that we've done it. Now, the way that we've scaled it, now that didn't come out right. Oh, I know why. Because I told it to put it all in one and I just messed up. Alright, we're going to redo that. I wanted to rotate reference. Alright, those we've answered. I'm not real sure what this question's asking. Is there a way to do two different plan view clips? And yeah, you can. Say the clip of a motif file that does not go to the border limits, but then have a text file that goes from the border edge of the plan sheet, not the clip border. You would wind up going in and you have to set up, it's in the sheet library, you'd have to go in and set up your ports so that your ports are different. I'd have to look at it with you and see exactly what you're trying to do. If that's something that you are needing to do, give me a call and I can walk you through it. But it would be in the way that you set your ports up for how large the drawing area versus and your offsets and where to place that from the origin, and you'd set all of that up in there, and it would be one of the dual plan sheets. And yes, it can be done. You just got to tell it where those ports are at. All right. How do you add sheets to a cross street? You would go in and use the alignment of your cross street in order to clip those sheets. And then they would go in as well. Can I use referenced borders? What exactly do you mean by that? The clip borders, I need to be in the clip border file to run the clip program. Are you wondering, can I have borders referenced into the file when I run the clipping program? Or are you asking if you can put the sheets in another file and it gets referenced in? I'm not sure what you're asking there. Yes to all. All right. That looks much, much better. Should be almost finished. Okay. So as you can see, I can go back in and go File, Open, and I can open up this plan sheet, plan and profile border sheet file. Blah, blah, blah. Let me get my words out right today. Alright, so there's where it's clipped, and I just went ahead and had it clip the first 4 sheets. Okay. The other option that I wanted to show you, and really, I'm not going to actually do this, so I can just show it to you. If I wanted to use Motif Files, and basically, and this is the difference. If I look at, well, actually, let me just bring up the references. If I look at the references in here, and this is my main difference, for, and let me hit highlight so you can see this. You can see it's highlighting the border of where this reference is. If it's referenced all of these files to the top, and then it's also referenced all of these files to the bottom. Okay, so I wind up with everything that has been referenced twice. And there are some people that they don't want that. They don't like that. It's not hurting anything, but that is the way that it works, because all of those reference files are attached to my clip RD. So every time it clips, when I have dual areas, whether it's a dual plan sheet or I'm looking at these that are, you know, plan and then profile, I'm clipping twice, so I'm getting everything that in all the settings within that reference file twice. Okay. If you don't want it to do that, you can set this up to use Motif Files. Motif Files is, I only have referenced to my clip RD file, those 2 Motif files. I would clip the borders, and then I would tell it, but whenever I do it, I need to go into this layout. Instead of telling it to use the current design, I want it to use the motifs. Tell it OK. Go back over here to layout sheets, and when I look at this, it's using the current file. I don't want it to use the current file, I want it to use a motif file. So I would tell it to use the plan and the profile. Tell that okay. Alright, and then layout, but this has to be done when you're laying these borders out, because that information is associated with those clip borders. Okay, so when I go in to clip it the second time, then all I'm going to get, I'm not going to get all of these files each time. I'm going to get, for the plan portion, it's going to look and say, okay, what's attached to this motif file? And it would be the alignment, the design, the right-of-way, and the topo. And then it only attach those 4 files. And then if it goes into the profile, it will only attach the profile. Okay? The DSPFRD. Alright, that's all it attaches. So you don't get the same number of attachments when you're, and I guess that would be the bonus, but it's also more setup, because you've got to create the 2 different files, go in there, attach them. There's a little bit more maintenance involved in using them. So it's really preference. There's not a right way and a wrong way to do it. It's however you want to do it and what you're comfortable with. Okay. So that's how you would use Motif Files. Let me close this. Okay, one question here was, instead of multiple sheets in one file, what toggles would you need to activate or deactivate to produce single sheets per file? If I open up, let me get the tool back up again, and plan and profile, sheet composition. When I go to clip the sheets, which is a 3rd icon over, alright, instead of right here where it says sheets per file, I would tell it 1. No, it's because I'm in the wrong file. If I told it 1, open it up right and processed, then it would give me four design files. Okay, I do have one more question in here, is how do you center the sheets? I'm assuming that what you've got going on, because I've seen this before, is that if the way that if within the sheet library, the way that it's set up is it centers it so that based on the drawing area in the sheet library. Okay, if you change that, in other words, and this has got to finish doing what it's doing, should be almost done. If when I go to layout, or I'm in that sheet composition and I change the horizontal from 0 and then I set it to 50, okay, what I've done is, in essence, I've made all of my clip borders smaller. And I'm back in here. Okay, so in this portion here, if I go in and, like, I think in my sheets, this was set to 20 because I was showing you how it changed things. When it did that, it made all of my borders smaller, and so that when it goes onto my plan sheet, if I look in the library and I look at the offset, okay, it's taking it, I am determining this point right here, this bottom left corner. That's where I'm taking the bottom left corner of this border and I'm placing it at that location. If I change the horizontal setting in here and I make those borders smaller, I need to go in here and modify this X value so that it pushes it over, and you just have to do the math basically, but it'll push it over so that it centers it back up, knowing that instead of 700 I've got 660 that I've got to center on my sheet. That's how you'd fix that. And I have run across that before. Okay, it's after 10 o'clock. I don't see any more questions coming in. I hope that I've been able to, give you some extra insight into how the tool works this morning, or if you haven't ever used the tool, hopefully it all made sense. If you have any questions at all about anything that I've gone over today, you give one of us in here a call. Most of us should be able to help you support this tool, but most definitely, give me a call and we'll get you where you need to be. If you guys need to contact me, there's my contact information. Have a fantastic day and a wonderful week, and hopefully we'll be seeing you next week. Thank you.